Hello boys and girls, welcome to the latest episode in our How to Play series, a bunch of videos where we teach you how to play all sorts of different tabletop games. Now on today's episode we're going to be playing a game called Love Letter. This is a really quick and easy to learn game. It takes about 20 minutes for the full game, but each round is nice and fast. It does use a thing called elimination, which means players get knocked out of the game. However, they're only knocked out for a round, so you'll only ever be sitting by watching the other people play for 30 seconds to a minute before you're back in the game and having fun. It's for 2 to 4 people, or if you have the premium version, it's 2 to 8 people. And yeah, it takes about 20 minutes. Really fun. Now, there are different variants of the game. There's Love Letter, the original one, which is where you're trying to get the love letter to a princess. There's a premium version, which has larger cards and a nice box, and that's the one where you can play up to 8 players. And there are variants. There's Adventure Time, The Hobbit, Batman, Archer, a whole bunch of stuff. You can also get them in boxes or little cloth bags. Essentially, they're exactly the same game. Each version has different artwork on the cards and some very small differences, but when it comes down to it, they all play the same way. So on today's episode, we're going to be playing with the Adventure Time deck. Actually, sorry, I'll teach you how to play using the original Love Letter, and then I'm going to be joined by Lily and Indy, maybe Lachlan, see if he's available, and we'll play through using the Adventure Time deck because that's their favourite deck. Anyway, I'll turn the camera down, teach you how to play, and then next episode I'll be joined by the kids and we'll run through a demo game with you. Cheers! Before we start setting up the game, I just want to quickly run through some details on the cards. So each card has a whole bunch of different information on it. First bit of information is this number up in the top right here. Love Letter is a game that is played in rounds. Each round ends when your deck of cards are empty or when there are no other players left in the game. If all other players have been eliminated, then the one player that's left is the winner for that round. If the deck of cards has been eliminated, however, whoever is holding the card with the highest number in their hand at the end of the round is the winner. So basically your goal is to have the highest value card in your hand at the end of the round. There's a whole bunch of backstory depending on the version of Love Letter that you're playing. In this original version, you're trying to get your love letter to a princess in the hope of courting her. If you play the Adventure Time one, then you're trying to have the most interesting hero in your hand. Well, not hero, interesting character in your hand by the end of the round, so they'll convince Princess Bubblegum to get out of her lab and come and play. And there's the Batman one and the Hobbit one and the Archer one. The Archer one's funny actually. You have to have you're trying to blackmail Mallory Archer, so you need to get your incriminating evidence to the most highest ranking character. Anyway, whatever the flavor text happens to be, it's not important for the game. All you need to worry about are these numbers in the top right. The next bit of information on the card are these little stars here. They indicate how many of each card is in the deck. So in the Prince case, there are 2 Prince cards in the entire deck. There are 5 Guard cards, there are 2 Handmaid cards, and there's only 1 Princess card. I'll explain why that's important later on, but for now I just wanted to point out that it's there. The last bit of information you have is down the bottom of the card, which is the action you perform. Again, I'll run through that in a second. What I wanted to show you before we began was what the cards look like with particular reference to the number up the top there. Setting up a game of Love Letter is incredibly simple. You take the deck of 16 cards, shuffle them together, and then place them in the center of the table. You then remove the top card and take it out of the game without looking at it. Well, without looking at the face side of the card. Obviously you have to look at the back. Funny man. If you're playing a 2-player game, you also reveal the top 3 cards of the deck and put them somewhere nearby where all players can see them. They're not used in that round. However, they are displayed so that people can see 3 of the 4 cards that are missing. We'll get into why that's important shortly, but for the moment, let's pretend we're playing a 3-player game. So we would shuffle, drop them on the table, pick it up, shuffle again, because I can't shuffle like a normal person. Remove the top card, place it aside, and deal each of the 3 players 1 card each. Regardless of whether you're playing a 2, 3 or 4-player game, each player only gets 1 card. Turn order is then extremely simple. You merely draw a card, add it to your hand, so you then have 2 cards, decide which card you're going to play, place it down in front of you, and then perform the action denoted at the bottom of the card here. So for example, on this guard card, you name a non-guard card and choose another player. If that player has that card, he or she is out of the round. So this gets us into where the card counting is important. On the flip side of the quick reference card, you'll see there's a list of all the cards in the game. So there's 1 princess, 1 countess, 1 king, 2 princes, 2 handmaids, 2 barons, 2 priests, and 5 guards. Now keep in mind we've actually removed a card that nobody knows what it is. So, keeping in mind that the 2 ways to win the round are by eliminating the other players or having the highest card when the deck ends, this player might go, well actually, on the first turn, this player doesn't really know who has what cards or what cards are where, so they might say, player 2, do you have a king? The player 2 looks at their hand, doesn't show the player, but goes, no, I do not have the king. Therefore, nothing happens. If that player did have a king, they would reveal the king in front of them and they'd be out for the rest of this round. Then the next player has a turn, draws a card. In this case, they've got the baron, so they've got the princess, whose rule is if you discard the card, you're out of the round. Obviously not going to discard that. And the baron. You and another player secretly compare hands. The player with the lower value is out of the round. So you would go, okay, I'm going to play the baron and I'm going to compare hands with this player here. Those 2 players secretly compare hands, and obviously an 8 is higher than a 1, so the 1 goes down there and the 8 stays in her hand. This player, no, not her hand, or his hand, whatever, this player's hand, and they're still in the round. Now that can be a very good card when something like that happens, because nearly every card in the deck is higher than a number 1. But strategy-wise, say that person had discarded a king, which is a 6 card, then this player would know that this player has either a 7 or an 8 card in their hand. Either way, play continues like that. This player would draw a card and choose a card to play. So that's choose any player, yourself included, to discard his or her hand and draw a new one. So in that case, this person would have to discard their hand and draw a new hand. Unfortunately, they've discarded the princess, so they're out of the game. In this particular scenario, this player has won the round, so they would get a token of affection, which indicates that they have won. These scorekeepers determine when a player wins the game. In a 2-player game, the first player to 7 tokens wins. Right number. In a 3-player game, it's 5 tokens, and in a 4-player game, it's 1 token. So in this example, the first player to 5 would win. Once that's completed, the cards get shuffled together and you start a new round. All players are then back in the game, including eliminated ones. Let's pretend, for the time being, that that person didn't discard the princess. They had a guard in their hand, they had a handmaiden in their hand, so they discarded the handmaiden and drew a new card. Then, this player's turn, they would draw the countess, and so they play a guard card, and then they say, do you have a prince? And he has a priest, or she has a priest. So no. And then this person's turn, they buy and play a card, etc, etc. It's that princess again. They buy and play a card, etc, etc, until there are no cards left in the draw pile. At that point in time, both players would show their cards, and whoever had the highest value card, in this case this player, would then win the round. Now you'll notice when I was playing cards, I'm playing them in front of the player, ordered like so. It doesn't matter how you do it really, you can do it like that, or like that. The important part is that it is clear to other players which cards you have played. So either the name or the number at least has been shown at the top. Considering the number of cards in the deck, we usually find it easier to do it like so. It also helps indicate, right, that was the card they played first, then that, and so on and so forth. Now, because there are only 8 cards in the game, it's quite easy to run through the effects of each so that you can see the different strategies that ensue. So we'll clear this up and I'll run you through what the different card types are. The first card is the number 1 card. This is a guard card. There are 5 of them in the deck, and the text reads, name a non-guard card and choose another player. If that player has the card, he or she is out of the round. Now, this is where the number of cards in the deck is important. On the flip side of the quick reference card, you'll notice that there's a list of all the cards in the game. So it'll say, for example, 1, guard, in brackets 5, which means that there's 5 cards. Guess a player's hand. This is a quick reference to tell you what each of the cards does, in summary, as well as how many are in the deck. So as players are playing cards on the table, if there are, for example, 2 princes already on the table, and you played a guard card, there's no point guessing if someone else has a prince. You already know the 2 princes are on the table. You want to guess a card that somebody else might have in their hand, and if they do, then they're out of the round. Even better yet, if you've managed to see their hand, then you've got an advantage and you know what card they have. Second card is the Prince card. There are 2 of those in the deck, and they allow you to look at somebody else's hand. A very useful card if you happen to have a Prince and a guard in your hand, because you can play a Prince this turn and look at someone's hand, and if they still have that card next turn, you can then play the guard next turn and eliminate them from the round. The third card is the Baron card. There are 2 of those in the deck as well. You and another player secretly compare hands, and the player with the lower value is out of the round. So, let's say you had these 2 cards in your hand, for example, and you played that card. You would then be comparing the card that you had left in your hand with another player. So that's a great card to play if you have a high card in your hand and you think you're going to be able to knock someone out of the round. It's a terrible card to play if you had, say, a guard in your hand, because the best you can hope for is a tie. The next card you can play is the Handmaid card. There are 2 of those in the deck, and until your next turn, you ignore all effects from other players' cards. That means if someone challenges you with a guard, they're not allowed to ask the question. They've wasted their turn. If they want to look at your hand, they can't. They want to compare hands, they can't. You're basically immune until your next turn. That's another reason why it's important to play your cards in front of you in a clearly defined order, because that shows to other players that the most recent card you played is the Handmaid and isn't, say, a guard, or if you had them in a messy stack, then something else. The next card in the set is the Prince, and there are 2 of those in the deck as well. You choose any player, including yourself, to discard his or her hand and draw a new card. So what that means is whatever card you had left in your hand, you'd put it down in front of you, discard it, and draw a new card to replace it. We'll get to it later on, but there is a card, the Princess card, where if you are forced to discard that at any point in time, or you choose to discard it, then you're out of the round. So that's a good card to make someone immediately lose if you happen to know that they have the Princess. But we'll get to her in a second. The next card is the King. Bit of a rare card, there's only 1 of him in the deck. The King card allows you to trade hands with another player. So, after you've played that card, if you had a Baron and someone else had the Princess, say, you could play that card and say, right, we're trading, give your card to that player and they give you. You understand how trading cards works. I don't probably need to explain that. The next card to play is the Countess card, which is number 7, so we're getting into the high numbers now. And if you have this card and the king or prince in your hand, you must discard this card. So if you had those two cards in your hand, you have to discard her. If you had those two cards, you have to discard her. If you had these two cards, you may discard either. So if you're into bluffing and all that sort of stuff, you could have draw the countess into your hand with the handmaiden, sigh, and then play the countess, thus making other people think that you have a prince or king. The last card is the princess card, and there's one of those as well. Sorry, there's one of the countess card too, I forgot to mention that. Pretty simple card. If you discard the princess, you're out of the round. So ideally, you don't want to have to discard the princess. That said, she's also the highest value card. If you end the round with the princess in your hand, you've immediately won. And that is about it for how to play Love Letter. In the next episode, I'm going to be joined by the kids and we're going to play through a game of the Adventure Time variant of Love Letter. So until then, thanks for watching and we'll see you next time.